Alright, in this vlog I'm going to be going over some issues of possession, problems with possessions, and how that relates to mojo reading. I'll be going into some more specifics when I get into individual people's cases, but there are some repeating themes I thought it'd just be helpful to get several of them done out front as they apply to many people involved here. Alright, these are in no particular order. First up is fear. I think that from what I'm observing from people's reactions during this period of pod layer fallout, that, well, first let me say that I hope this is helpful to you someday. I know that we will not be communicating and interacting as we have in the past, and we'll be going our separate ways, and I'm quite fine with that. But I feel in good conscience I need to first respond to things that have been accused of me, but also to do my best, even now in the end, to be a helping hand to you, if at all possible. So something I would look out for is the fact that there are things that you are doing that if you are in a clearer state of mind, when your spirit is in a healthier place, you'll be able to note maybe one or more of these things I'm pointing out, and perhaps that will raise some alarm bells that you should maybe rethink what's going on inside yourself and get to a higher place before proceeding further. So as I said, the first one I noticed, well, not first, but it's one of the ones I noticed, is fear. There is a lot of fear permeating from this fallout of the community. There is a fear, I feel palpably, that you are afraid of being made fun of, and the idea of being mocked by the world at large and being seen as silly weighs heavily on you. And I would posit that that kind of weight is something that you couldn't really expect to be a helpful thing to be going on when you're trying to do upper level spiritual work, really even upper level scientific work, anything that strains oneself's ability and takes you to your maximum, your limits, and you try to push past those. When you're doing those kinds of things, you have to be aware of anything weighing you down. And so you're all being weighed down by quite a bit of fear. Fear of looking silly, for one thing. Another fear is the fear of, I think, during this kind of fallout period, that you don't want to have any incidental or collateral damage done to you. And so there is a fear that this kind of mob mentality is going to turn on you, and you have to make sure that you kind of get your blows in, do your virtue signaling, make sure that you got a stab in there, so that it doesn't in turn turn on you. You're afraid of this kind of mob that is formed here. You're afraid of the mob turning on you. And I think all of you, if you are really honest and look at it, you are afraid. You're afraid of looking foolish. You're afraid of looking or being attacked by this mob that you are a part of. And because of the paranoia and the fear and the insecurities that have been raised up, you are now in fear also that you've been conned by me. Now that's a legitimate fear that can be placated through looking at the data, or not, one way or the other. But I noticed that the attempts to placate these fears are turned to other people to alleviate through their words, through things they say, through backing up what you have said, and so on. And really, the only question of whether or not this is really going on, or whether or not I am trying to pull the wool over anyone's eyes, which I'm not, but if that's going to be found out, it wouldn't be through the mechanisms I see you all using. So the mechanisms I'm seeing are basically floundering in fear. I already touched on it just now, but it's its own thing, which is the mob. I believe that the majority of you are possessed by mob mentality now, and I think at least several of you over the years have expressed views of yourself and people in general as far as being admirable, that independence of mind is very key. Now, whether or not you agree with my positions or not, you agree with the data or not, you agree with how I've conducted myself throughout this research or not, that is separate than getting taken over by mob mentality. And it's fairly evident that most of you have. You've been taken over by this. And one is the fear that the mob will turn on you, but also a joy. There's a joy in being part of this mob. I would ask yourself, how much joy do you take in being part of this mob, and how does that relate to your belief that independence of mind is a valuable thing to have, and how much do you think you're having right now? For example, I think a lot of you are under the idea that you are now exerting your independence of mind in reaction to me and pushback to me. There may be some of that, but a lot of it actually seems to be just you're going along with the mob and you enjoy being in a mob. It reminds me a bit of a lot of those regressives you see on college campuses that are just pumped up that something big is happening and you are part of it. You are part of this mob kind of creature. So to me, that's fairly evident, and I think it'll be evident to you as well. If there's other things that obviously are errors in my part, that's a separate issue, but this part here, I think you could isolate and go, regardless of my views on this guy and what he's doing, this behavior I'm engaged in falls under mob sway. I've been swayed by a mob and I'm enjoying it. In fact, I enjoy this more than the feeling of independence of mind, which is a often lonely experience. Related to that, I mentioned it, its own thing as well, is loneliness. I believe there is a lot of possession of loneliness, besides not wanting to look silly, not wanting to be turned on, things like that, is being alone. I think that a lot of you overestimate your ability to stand alone, and that the feelings of being alone and that the tide is not going to sway in your favor as far as like the ongoings of the world, regardless of how you're doing. You know, how you're progressing. If you see truth, if you're progressing in truth, if you're developing yourself, if that's going to be a lonely experience, I think all of you should take a moment and really ask yourself if you would be still excited about the prospect of going towards a direction that is truer than where you are, is going to develop yourself better than it is now, and is going to do work that could be helpful to other humans someday, but knowing that's going to be a path of loneliness. How daunted does that make you? I think it makes you far more daunted than you are yourself accepting. I believe this is one of your many possessions, and it's influencing obviously your take on pod layer in general, but it will also directly relate to being able to read the mojo phenomenon, as it is a real part of reality, but is a subtle part, and subtle things are difficult to see when you are under any kind of significant possession. Another one is greed. Now, I take some responsibility in that I thought that you all would be able to have your mojo reading abilities gain ground faster than they have been, and I thought that more of the world will be able to see it sooner, so there'll be more opportunities in a worldly sense. However, this has always been posited as an endeavor first for truth, whatever that means, developing yourself, whatever that means, and trying to do good for future generations. Other things are bonuses. And I wish I could have made those bonuses come true, but I don't have that power. But it seems to me that a lot of what I'm hearing is being upset that worldliness is not going to come from this. In fact, it feels to me like I'm hearing more of that than actually whether or not this is true or not, whether or not my behavior is bad or not. It seems that the trueness of the situation and my conduct in the situation is highly, for you anyway, volatile situation based on what you think you're going to be getting out of it. And, while I acknowledge that all humans have to, get theirs, when it comes to assessing a subtle universal truth for the entire species for the future going forward, that is a very limited headspace. Now, I don't think you can ever get rid of that entirely. I mean, it's part of being a human, but it cannot supersede those other things. And from what I'm seeing from all of you, in general, different ones, different degrees. Some of you are doing quite well, other ones quite bad, some are in the middle. But there is a general theme of, I want more. And that I want more is sort of like a louder signal than, is it true or not, or am I a jerk or not? It seems almost like the truth of it or my good or bad conduct, not as important as if you're getting somewhere out of it, you're getting something. So I recognize that that is a human need, but it is also a possession that can get in the way when you're trying to do something that is higher than that is bigger than you, that is something that is a greater good that you are going to give yourself over in service to. I'm sensing your desire to do service for humanity is lower than your desire to have stuff for you. And that's a possession that is going to directly get in the way of you being able to do this work. So your ability to do so, you need to account for these possessions. You can't just say, oh, it's here, it's not here, I can do it, I can't do it, as if it's flat, and not acknowledge these things that may or may not be on you. And I think that several of these possessions are quite obviously on you to some degree. Something else is that this goes along with me being accused with my ego and my domineering personality, and those are things I have addressed. I can work on them, but I think my need to work on them is far less than your need to work on your reaction to them. I think you're angry. I think you're bitter. I think you're resentful, and not just towards me. I believe it is towards life. Again, this reminds me a lot of the regressives I see on college campuses. I believe you have problems with reality. I think you have problems with your place in the world. I think you don't feel very good about yourselves. I think you are angry that things have not worked out for you in the world in general the way you want. And so you are looking for things to blame for you not having what you want to be out of life. So I take responsibility for things that I've done wrong. I wish I could have gotten the data more pure sooner. I wish that I did not think that your abilities were, I was not erroneous in assessing that and assessing how quickly the world would be able to make use of what we were doing. So I take ownership for that, and I can understand anger in that regard, anger and disappointment to a degree. But the gifts being given actually easily trump that, and the lashing out I'm seeing in the Facebooks and things like that, and comments and forums and so forth, it seems very much to me as if you are compensating for something else, almost like you're trying to attack someone or something that did you wrong a long time ago that has built up. Like my domineering nature, I think perhaps in life you've been dominated a lot. Perhaps you felt less talented than a lot of people. Perhaps you have felt that you had to take a place in the pecking order in school, job, family, romance, whatever, in the street. You felt you had to take a pecking order that's less than you wanted, but it's what you were able to get. And so that anger at that, now you feel like I can finally hit somebody back, and this person looks like they're in a weakened position because we can say whether or not we see the data or not, and that'll do something. It doesn't, but it makes you feel like you have some strength finally. I have some power, and I'm going to do something with it. Well, you're not really doing anything at all except looking silly and showing lesser aspects of yourself. So I would question the gleefulness that you're having here with the anger. Now, granted, we knew each other for years, and so there can be built up upsetness. But if the phenomenon is true, then the way it's taught and your pecking order as far as your ability to assert opinions based on being able to doing it, that was accurate. And so if you're angry at that, you're just angry in general. And you should be aware of this before you just dismiss it. Okay, I know you guys dismiss things way too easily. That is a pervasive human thing. Humans in general are in situations, school, home, work, whatever, where they have to take a pecking order they wish they could make different. And they can't, and that's just the way it is. And then when a leader might show some weakness, it's common for a lot of people to then jump on them and try to actually air out grievances or make things seem worse than they are, or basically try to get payback for all the wrongs they feel the world has done to them, all the coup they should have and didn't get. So I would look into that when you are in a better state of mind. Another thing is pain avoidance. I'm not saying this to be harsh, it's just true. I have bona fide been through some very rough things. I've been around people who've been through very rough things. My dad was in the Secret Service. I've known people who did crazy shit in the street. I grew up in a rough all-black neighborhood being a white boy. So I have definitely done things that show that I have a strength of character that you do not. I'm not saying that you don't. I would doubt it, but at the minimum, you've never demonstrated being strong. Really strong and being able to endure the hardships of what's going on, of what life can offer as far as a hardship that will dissuade you from your goal. So I believe there's quite a bit of pain avoidance that is engineering your thinking. And so you're doing things that are allowing you to get out of pain. For example, like the loneliness of this life perhaps. Same thing, the ups and downs. You all, I think, are complaining more about the pain of the ups and downs and trying to pin that as, oh, that means it doesn't know what it's doing, or we've been hoodwinked. No, the data is stronger than ever, and the corrections that have been made over the years are because the ability to see it is better and better, and therefore the exactitude has become more spot on. But I'm hearing things that signal that you've been wounded. You are, for lack of a better term, butthurt. You're butthurt. You're in pain, and you want, first of all, like payback. That's the anger thing. But this is actually going forward. You don't want to experience it again. You don't want to go on the mat again. Any kind of like real combat sport, for example, going on the mat, whether it's submission grappling, boxing, kickboxing, wrestling, and the ones that like it's full on in some way, you're gonna get hurt. If not your physical body, your pride. You will attempt to do something with everything you have, and it will be insufficient. You'll be off base. It'll be off balance. You'll get smashed. You will fail, and you'll fail in a way there is no gray area. I failed, and I have to do better. That's painful, and that's why a lot of people like traditional martial arts. Kind of like a lot of regressives, for example, they like to hide out in areas of the humanities where firm data really doesn't encroach too much, because then you can avoid the pain of really think you knew what was going on in that slide of a cell, some organism, and then a new microscope came in, showed it what's deeper in, and it contradicts what you thought. It may contradict it wildly. It may actually support someone that you can't stand. They may be an asshole. Yeah, but the new lens does support what they think about that cell structure above yours. That is painful. And if you think that most people can handle that, you are wrong. Very few people can handle that. You can avoid that just bracing, brutal pain of progression, which is going to be knocking you down, you get up, you re-find yourself, you go forward. You get knocked down, you get up, you re-find yourself, you go forward. That's the process. I feel like I'm hearing and smelling a lot of whinging, a tremendous amount of whinging about really the pain of anything. Like when I listen to famous people who've done scientific discoveries of all kinds, in the physical sciences, in the psychology, in space stuff, in marketplace for business, in artwork that's appreciated but first wasn't, that's always a part of it. And it's always a part of it to a degree that listening to you all whine, you can't handle. You're not going to be able to handle the brutality. Well, that brutality sounds wrong. The lack of mercy in your pain if you want to go forward. You simply have to deal with your pain and go forward. If you try to avoid that too much, that's it. And then the various routes you have to go forward, they will shrink. They will shrink to being ones that, aren't too painful for you to go forward. So, if you have ever gone through something truly difficult, and I'm talking about just happened to you and you survived, I mean, you chose it, which means when it gets painful, you could choose to stop. So you chose a certain path, it got painful, you continue that path, and you overcame many, many times. Have you really ever done that in life? Really? Like in a way that would impress another person? Because one thing my spirits show me all the time is, in the future, it'll be easier to deal with people for mojo. One is if they're younger. Another one is if they come from countries that are harder. It takes a tremendous amount of motivation to push through adversity to do anything truly significant, and this is majorly significant. You don't have it, or at least have never demonstrated. Not that I've seen, that's from many of you, even the ones I like. You've not demonstrated the ability to actually go through tremendous hardship. The kind of hardship that other people go, damn, I have, more than once in more than one area. Where people are like, whoa, you're still alive? Yeah, I'm still alive. So perhaps you should take a time out and get to where you can do that in anything before you actually can say that this pain is too much or you feel shouldn't be there at all. I'm kind of getting that idea that the ups and downs, the purifications, that was pain you had to endure that you shouldn't have had to. And now you're in a state of painful unsureness that is unfair. No, that was just the journey. And if you want to go forward, it'll still be the journey. And I can tell you, as a person who's done these kinds of things, and I've known people who've done these kinds of things, my dad's Secret Service agent, decorated, FBI Treasury agent, undercover narcotics officer. He's been through rough stuff. My former best friend, his dad was like a top scientist for the military, did lasers and shit, went around the world meeting other famous scientists. So I am familiar with what it takes to actually be more than you are through effort. And you all have not really demonstrated that yet. So I think that you should take a time out and ask yourself, what is your relationship with pain? How much pain do you think there should be? When should the pain of growth stop? When does it get to, oh, finally, Coach got us here, now we can be like we should? Really? When? In New Frontiers of Discovery, exactly when is that psychic position supposed to be achieved? I'm not quite sure where you think in the world in general, and definitely in areas where gnarly discoveries are being made, yet to forge ahead. Pain is a big part of it, and you are whinging at really not that high level of pain. So, a person who comes from a life that is truly difficult, and then they're learning this most important discovery, and if you don't think it's the most important, it's highly interesting. Most of you even acknowledge that there's something there of some importance. Not saying it's what he says, not saying he's doing it right, but there's something there of some importance. Okay, then on that alone, your whinginess on the pain levels is not commiserate. It's not commiserate with the situation. Next. Again, this gets to a lot of like the regressiveness I see in college campuses. I'm seeing a lot of a bit of snowflake behavior on your part. One of these things is there's a kind of a vibe of sort of like communism, Marxist thinking in what you're doing. A general vibe of it should be fair. I think a lot of you are upset that, for example, I may or may not have way more talent than you. Now let's leave aside whether or not I do. That's for other vlogs. But I'm sensing in you a just upsetness at that as a concept. The idea that some people are born being able to run a 40-yard dash way better than other people, and no matter how much most of the humans train, they won't be able to beat that person. Like Jesse Owens, I think it was Jesse Owens, it's him or someone else, super fast guy. And they're like, man, you're the fastest person in the world. And he's like, nope. Like, really? Who's faster than you? Who's this runner? We'd have heard of them. My brother. They're like, is your brother a runner? Doesn't feel like it. My brother is a more talented runner than I am. I think his brother became a doctor or something, some other kind of thing. He's like, wasn't interested in the athletics. But every time we ran against each other, he beat me. So he actually is the more talented runner, and he made it fairly obvious then that if they had both continued in the running game, he would have been the fastest runner. That's just how it is. His other brother had more talent than actually the current fastest runner in the world. Does that bother you? Does that bother you that he said that his brother actually could sometimes just, wander off from doing whatever science or other thing he was doing and still run extremely well? Maybe couldn't beat Jesse Owens in his prime as Olympically trained, but basically could just walk out of an office, take his loafers off, put some sneakers in, and beat 99% of the people on the planet in a foot race down the block. Does that concept of reality rattle you? Yes, it does. I'm listening to what you all are writing, and it reeks. You reek of, it should all be fair. Talent is a construct. No, it's not. Talent is not a construct. Hard work is not a construct. You can't just law of attraction, think on a lot. You have to have talent, and you have to put in a lot of hard work, and you have to organize your life so it does not distract you. That's the way of it. But it seems like you want to have talent not really be a big deal. You can live your life any way you want. I should get the same Mojo reading results. Really? Why does that happen that way? You may not have the talent. You all are definitely, in general, not doing anywhere near the work ethic that would make sense for wanting the results that you think you should have. So I would check yourself on that Marxist thinking. It's not going to do you well in life to have this expectation. And going along with that is on the mob thing, and this too, again, this like regressive thing, this is like a big virtue signal parting. You're talking about possibly a very important discovery, and you're basically just whinging on about virtue signaling. I think you are organizing the world based on a way that reality does not support. And you can separate my theory out of it. Just in general, I believe I'm sensing a balking on your part, your soul's chafing at the idea that there may just be people who are smarter than you. There may be people that can do other things better, that perhaps you're not going to be making the major contributions that you thought. That's the way it is. Stories in our mind have to line up with the world. Now, I know you all may think that I might be crazy, but I believe my story is lining up with data. At the least, it is data that is highly significant. Another one is determinism. The fact of the matter is that the more you study science in any field, and this includes humans, the more you'll realize that there is quite a lot of determinism built into it, a level of determinism that most humans throughout human history have been uncomfortable with. So with Podlair, if what we're seeing is true, and I believe it is, what I'm saying is true, then there is going to be a amount of determinism people don't like. But this gets back to kind of like the regressive thinking. I think a lot of people have issues. For example, I asked my spirits if I should even do the gender mojos, because it's going to upset a bunch of people. Like, no, you can't be saying that. It's just the basic designs. No, the genders change things. So some people actually, they have an issue with the reality of that being true, and then they try to force that onto scientific discovery. That view of like, that's how the world should be. Men and women differences should just be a construct, but it isn't. And so as a part of that, determinism. Yes, it shows from the data that a lot of career bubbles, there are only a few designs that show up in there, so that means that there is a amount of determinism in there that is quite predictive. That's one of the wonders of it, but you're going to have to swallow, for you anyway, this bitter pill that, yes, your mojo design will have a significant influence on where you end up in life, what talents you have, what you're able to do and not do well. Over the years, I've tried to mitigate this by like, any mojo can do anything. And I do believe there's a huge amount of range in all the mojos, but I know that I've had to soften that blow for you. So I know you have that possession because I've known that while we were hanging out. So I can tell you now as a favor, you're going to have to just get over that. Regardless of me or Pod or anything else, you're just going to have to get over the fact that there is more determinism in life than probably you're happy with. People in first world countries tend to have a hard time with that. People who are pampered, who are entitled, they tend to want to believe that the world can be more malleable to their wants and to their expectations than is actually the case. Yet another one is a general preference, and this has been one that has been throughout the years. This is for those who were impressed by Demas's words early on in Podlair, from the way you react to me and what you like for me to give you in vlogs, and how people reacted to Demas's latest email, and how I see you all reacting on the Facebook and so forth, is the Facebook. But it shows a clear preference. If you're able to see clearly, take a step away, like a day or two or longer, and then come back and just look and note your preference. You have a clear preference for words over observed data. You like it better. You find more comfort in it. It gives you more a sense of like what's going on. So you actually prefer to be told about Naiji than to have it pointed out. This has been throughout the years. Throughout the years, I've consistently pushed you have to look at what's going on because that's the only thing that makes it real. And people want explanations. They want words. And they like them better. Over and over again, when I give people breakdowns of the cues and this and that, they're like, and then they want me just to talk to them about stuff. That's a serious problem you're going to have to get over, because that's like talking about biology and really not being super interested in looking at microscopes, studying the latest microscopes and what they can do, and being on the lookout for new microscopes and what new capabilities they bring to the table. That should be the majority of excitement for you, of which the talking about things is based on. At any point, talking starts to supersede the supreme importance of the lens in looking at what you're talking about, you have a major problem. So all of you generally suffer from wanting words over data. you have never really preferred data over words. I mean, just years of dealing with you all through Facebook, through vlogs, through emails, through instant messages, you prefer words. And that's a problem. You are possessed by your reliance on words and the constructs the words make in your brain, rather than observing something and letting those observations make constructs or correct constructs. That's an ongoing problem. And even now, when you're trying to diss me, you sound ridiculous because you're trying to actually diss something that can only be dissed or verified through visual observation. So even if you're trying to tear me up, it'd be better if you actually just went in and said, this sample, this person is supposed to be a Vijay. Their eyes don't look very glassy to me. Now we could argue about that, and we could have differing opinions, but at least that would be really worth talking about. Otherwise, just words on words on words on words, which is what I made fun of MBTI the whole time, and many of you did too, yet really, deep down, I think you still have that preference yourself, and it is a possession, and you should work on it. Since I mentioned it, typology, it's interesting that you all feel that you have broken away from typology, and that was maybe the one good thing that Podlair did for you is help break the typology spell, but nope, I don't believe Podlair ever really fully broke that spell on you. The way you talk, your preference for words, you're treating different things as being equally interesting, even the way you try to frame questions, even the way you try to frame me as if typology has too much of a hold on me when I'm looking at data. All of it says that, going back to the words, but I believe the words of typology actually still have a great hold on a lot of you, and it influences your thinking and your expectations of how things should be. Like it should be some way left, right, up, down, different, same than typology. Even those of you who actually advocate the most that we should not do that, we should step out of typology, the way you reference it and bring in the conversation shows it still has too much power to you. In fact, sometimes it's presented to me as if typology has too much power on me, and no, it doesn't. Data has power on me, and so does spirits, not typology. But that is difficult for those to see who are still immersed in typology thinking, even when they think they're anti-typology. The way you're anti-typology and how much you spend time on that makes it as if there's more to that than there is. It's kind of like people who discuss spirituality, but they insist on the theist-atheist dichotomy. That's not even the dichotomy. The fact that you're making it that dichotomy shows to me that you're not even really looking at the situation from the proper high enough perspective, because that really doesn't even need to come to the conversation that often. And the fact that it keeps coming up means there's something rattling around the back of your brain that you need to find what it is and put on a shelf somewhere that it can do some good. Another thing, and this one's related to the anti-determinism, but it's different in that it's less of a avoidance of what you feel is a negative, but more wanting a false positive outcome, which is wishful thinking. There's a lot of things I'm hearing of like, oh, yeah, the data probably can't be right because it should be like this, it should be like that. That's not how it works. You have to first determine if the lens I'm talking about is in fact the proper lens, and thus the data is the data as the lens observes. That's the whole thing. The question on it should or shouldn't be is an afterthought at best. And yet it seems to preoccupy a lot of your thoughts. Like, why doesn't this have more variety? Or why is it only like this? Or that doesn't seem right. Based on what? Your viewing of the data. So you keep jumping ahead to upper level thinking that you don't even have the fundamentals of observation to be doing those. And as a course of that, it seems like a whole lot of wishful, magical thinking, even from people who pride themselves on being rather scientifically rigorous or logically sound. We still have a few more here. Next up is this consistent theme, and it really is, to me, sad that you're all so possessed this way, is the idea that more people equals success, as if that's ever been the way major discoveries, major breakthroughs go forward. No, you have to crack a code. And then you have to prove that you've cracked a code. And you can prove that to yourself, to one other person, to a computer somewhere, in a book that gets picked up by generations, in the future. That's how these things happen. A lot of people agreeing to it mean nothing. So this has been a theme. A lot of the different comments people are making on Facebook of, oh, things are going bad now because the community's turned on you. No, not unless it has something to do with the data. No, it doesn't. In fact, and the fact that you think in those terms is one of the many reasons you have the lack of ability that you do. It's actually about the Rosetta Stone. It's about how many samples we have, how clean they are. So the fact that people there's a strong resistance to measuring progress based on that metric, but that is the metric. That's always been the metric. Even if it fails, yeah, but it's going to fail or succeed on that metric. So the metric of how many people are doing it is just silly. How many people are doing it, how much money is being done. Like I hear these kind of things like, oh, this person's doing well or this person's not doing well. Are we talking about like life comfort, general material successfulness? Or are we talking about major discovery and breakthrough? Because not only is that not how you measure it, that is directly a distraction from getting real progress. If you're trying to actually do a cure for cancer and you're making progress, each thing there, and you say, well, you haven't made a lot of progress there because you got divorced. Or you did not get a huge research grant. So even though you have the most important data in that area, you've got less financing than these other researchers. Is that how you measure how progress is made? Well, let me phrase that. Is that how you think it is? Because it's definitely how you do, because that's what you write. That's what seems to make you feel like, aha, we're winning, or I'm losing, or anything of that nature. That's not how it's ever been done. That's not how I ever presented it. So you yourself over the years, many of you have said, yeah, that makes sense. And now you're going back on that. So note that. That's one of the things about possession is it makes you actually have inconsistency of character, lowering of your abilities. I just touched on that, I'll mention here a little more, is something to watch out for is when you are possessed, as many of you are right now, your abilities drop. And so I see a lot of very simple mistakes in making points, in connecting logical statements, in behavior that you have said you don't like in others and now you're doing. So it's quite a lot of lowering of your abilities, lowering of your character, lowering of your intellectual capacity. That should be a red flag. You shouldn't go, I'm not operating as well as I normally do. I'm being a bit myopic, I'm being a bit stubborn, I'm being a bit histrionic. I actually am not able to make cogent arguments as well as I normally do, and I'm leaning heavily on the mob just going, yeah. Drop the mob. Step away. Come back and look at yourself from a third person perspective and be like, is this me at my finest? Is this me actually doing the kind of behavior and action that I said I'm about? I think for a lot of you, I think that this was a low moment for you compared to things you've done in the past and what you have said is the kind of people you would like to be and grow into. You're not doing that right now, and that's fairly obvious once you get unpossessed, or even just take a moment away to let your head clear and then come back. And again, you should be able to do this separate from me. Separate from podular theory, separate from whether or not I am or am not an asshole. You should be able to just detach, step away, and then come back and look at yourself. And on that alone, you should be seeing things that should alarm you. Yet another one, this is related to like the greed thing, but greed and fear is kind of combined, but it's its own thing, which is camping out. A lot of you are young, you're not even that old. Already you're kind of like, what's my professional reputation going to be? And where am I going to be in 20 years? And how is this going to affect my credit rating for my house? That's kind of where your head seemed to be. So you're trying to figure out how a groundbreaking discovery is or is not real, and how it should or should not go forward, with who or without who, when you're in a position mainly of just camping out. That's what you're doing. You're looking for a comfortable position to camp out. That's what's happening. So that's not the seekers that you all said you wanted to be. That is a contradiction. So you should check on these personal contradictions. I'll close out here with two things that a little more advanced, but important for you to take a look at when you have the time, if you ever do. And these are things that you should note as being something the human psyche does you have to watch out for. Okay, one is, In role-playing games, there's a concept of non-player characters and player characters. You are all non-player characters in general. You're not really doing something significant to influence the future of humanity. And you haven't been. And that's been uncomfortable. And you now think that you are casting off the possession spell of mind jobbing that I did to you. When in reality, you are mind jobbing yourself. You are NPCs that I was giving you pressure, dominant pressure, that you'll need to do this to be a player character, particularly a player character on this adventure of, breaking ground on the case of the human condition and the meaning of existence. That's what you need to do. You don't want to do that, and you want to actually feel like you're a player character while paying the dues in life of a non-player character. Just hanging on a Facebook, wanking each other on your mental masturbation and vetting your feelings and going, yeah, I think that too. Okay, this is what you really want to do. That's what non-player characters do. Non-player characters spend a lot of time online just doing forum stuff and Facebook stuff and instant messaging each other and blah, 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 blah. And not a lot of time writing, not a lot of time doing data, not a lot of time working out, not a lot of time, whatever it is you need to do to go forward, avoiding that and trying to find some way to say that's flawed. Being a player character, the requirements of that in a given direction, that's an error. Not I don't want to actually do it, or I may just not have the prereqs for that character class. The character class and its pathway is flawed. No. You all need to actually realize that you've been acting like non-player characters for a while, and the best of you made, I think, noble efforts, which I congratulate you for, to be player characters. But now that trek has gotten too gnarly for you, and you are looking to bail out. And whether you know it or not, you're looking to go to the safety zone. You want to go to your safe space. You want to go to your safe space of being a non-player character, but you don't want to actually get the title of being a punk. So you're like, I'm not going to my safe space. I'm going to where things are actually right. It's wrong to do that. Your objections in general don't really hold much merit to people who are doing extraordinary things. The objections that you're making are objections of a person who's just sort of like, okay, so you just don't want to be great, or you're just not willing to pay the price, but you really don't want that title. You don't want the title of I'm not talented enough, or I am not dedicated enough to actually achieve greatness, so I want to poo-poo on greatness and those who actually are on course to achieve it. Another spell you're doing to yourself, you think that you are doing an exorcism of my mind control over you, but no, it is the opposite. You are possessing yourself with the idea that you are unpossessed. So I think several of you have actually been doing this, where you try to explain how your mind got addled to the state where you could see the phenomenon, and that was actually you at one of your brighter moments, and now you're actually trying to portray, in hindsight, a brighter moment as a possessed moment, thinking that you are unpossessing yourself. No, you're possessing yourself with stupid now. You're actually looking back at a moment that you were on a high point for your enlightenment and portraying it as a low point so that you can be comfortable in your camping out, your non-player character status, your safe zone. So, your minds are playing quite a lot of tricks on you right now, and you are claiming that I play tricks on you, when there is, to anyone who can really see, there's a lot of mental tricks being played by you all to avoid things that are at least in addition to the problems you have with me. So see if you can actually separate me out from that, and then actually look at yourself and realize these things you need to work on, separate from whatever happens with me and you going forward, because we're not going to be talking, not unless you actually go a different route than you've ever shown before, a desire to actually work with data in a serious manner. But you've given no inclination in years of knowing you, so I don't expect that now. But still, I'm troubled to see fellow humans that I know in any capacity to be possessed and not know they're possessed and feel they're doing well because demons feed off that. This sense of comfort, like, yes, you're doing well, as they make you weak. Just like those safe spaces at college campuses, you're doing well, we're making the world a better place, you're doing nothing except, well, you're not changing the world at all, and you're making yourself weaker in your ability to interact with it on a reality basis. All right, more to follow.